Welcome back. This video is part 2 of Chapter 15, Applying to Graduate School in Psychology for PSY 120, Careers in Psychology, Neuroscience, and Human Development. So as you gather information on graduate programs, what you're going to be doing is a lot of searching on the internet. I think one mistake that students often make when they're seeking graduate programs, particularly doctoral programs, is to think, I need to stay in one physical location and I can't look anywhere beyond that. Unfortunately, especially if you're talking about doctoral programs that are scientist model or scientist practitioner model doctoral programs, you need to go where the program is that is the best fit for what you want to do career-wise. And a lot of getting information on programs means looking at who the faculty are, looking at the program requirements, finding individuals on that faculty who you are likely to be a good fit with in terms of pursuing your degree there. Because, I'll be honest about it, the way doctoral program faculty go about selecting applicants, they want to know that they can have students who are going to work on their research projects that they want to mentor as they explore their own research going forward. So finding the right fit between you and the graduate faculty in that doctoral program is going to be super important. Those considerations are less significant at the master's level. So we'll talk through what kind of information should you gather. One of the best resources out there, and it's online, and from what my students have told me in recent years, there's a relatively modest fee for accessing the online repository of APA graduate study in psychology. The information that is included in the APA materials includes information that you can use to make decisions, like what are the criteria for admission? Is there a GPA limit? Is there a GRE score limit? What's the emphasis of the program? How many faculty do they have? How many students do they take every year? What other additional admissions criteria are there? And so on. They also tend to include, if you dig a little deeper, you should be able to determine what's their percentage acceptance rate and so on. Once you've got your list of preferred programs that are a good fit for what you want to do, go to the program websites and get more information. If the program website doesn't provide you with the information that you need, you can actually reach out to the contact for the program and get that information, because it's extremely important before you invest a lot of time and money. Find out if the program is a good fit for you. On those school websites, look at the program requirement, look at the degrees that are offered, the type of coursework that's required, look at the kinds of research opportunities that are available, and really look at who the faculty are. If the faculty have interests that are in common with you, that is a sign that there's a better fit between you and that graduate program. Now, as I said, that's particularly critical if you're going into a doctoral program, because the doctoral program is really about the mentor-mentee interaction. And if you try to get into a graduate program that's a doctoral program and you're kind of vague about what you want to do, number one, you're not going to get in. Number two, your research interests need to dovetail with the research interests and skills and abilities of at least one faculty member in that program. Now at the master's level, that's less important because you're not investing the length of time. It tends to be a bit more practice oriented. But still, having a good fit with the philosophy of the program, the expectations of the program, the end result output, like what kind of thesis are you expected to produce, what kind of dissertation are you expected to produce, and so on. So as you're evaluating graduate programs, you need to look at and any program that's worth it is going to have on their website the program goals or learning outcomes. And they're going to be upfront about those. Make sure those fit with your values and your beliefs and your expectations of yourself. Look at faculty research interests and publications. If there's no faculty member who's doing anything of even remote interest to you, you may want to move on. Find out information about how many students are in the program, how many actually achieve graduation with their degree. Look at the course offerings. Getting information about teaching goals and style, that can be a little trickier, but if you can dig down into faculty CVs and look at their curriculum vitae, you can get some more ideas of what kind of teaching style is offered. One thing that you can discover is it an all online program? Is it a program that's mostly online, partly in person? Is it all in person? Are there hybrid courses? Because you need to make sure that the way they're teaching is a good fit for you. Historically, if you've always struggled with online teaching, signing up for an all online master's program is probably not going to be good for you. And you might benefit from doing an on-campus, in-person master's program. The reverse, if you need to keep your full-time job, but you want to get a master's degree, an all-online program may be great for you. And if you've had good success in online programs in the past, you may be a perfect fit for that. If you're going into practice-oriented fields, so clinical and counseling, forensic, for example, absolute requirement, the program has to be APA accredited. Completing the application, much like applying for a job, although here, unlike applying for jobs, there's a fee. Typically, you have to pay to apply. So, depending on your financial situation, you're going to need to set up an application budget. A lot of graduate programs still require that you take the GRE, the graduate record exam, which is like a slightly meaner version of the SAT. That has a fee. There's a cost associated with that. And then submitting applications, there's a fee for processing your application. It's a way of ensuring that people don't just willy-nilly apply to every program in the country. They want people to show some degree of seriousness, so they require an application fee. So you have to decide how many programs can I afford to apply for as I'm going through the process. In doctoral programs, they tend to be very competitive, meaning they take a very small number of students every year because the school is typically going to invest in them. They're going to pay for them to take classes, meaning they're giving them tuition remission, either in full or part. They're also going to be offering them assistantships. So they're taking very few, and the fit between the student who's applying and the faculty is of great importance. A good ballpark number, plan on applying to 6 to 10 programs. Especially if you're applying in clinical psychology doctoral programs, you're going to need at least that many to have a shot at getting in. And this can become expensive. So again, evaluate your options, think about what you can afford. And also what I tend to recommend to my students, if they're kind of on the fence about master's versus PhD, pick 5 master's programs, pick 5 doctoral programs, and investigate them and really think through what you want to do. Most graduate programs today have online applications. You typically have to include additional information that you submit, including your undergraduate transcripts to document your appropriateness for the program. I mentioned the GRE, the graduate record exam. There's a general test, and the GRE, some schools are moving away from using it at all. I know that during COVID, there was a movement away from it really, really strongly, but even before COVID, there was a tendency for some schools to just start limiting the requirement, making it optional. Some schools still absolutely positively require it. So right now, only about 26% of doctoral programs require the GRE, and that's down from in 2019, the overwhelming majority, 92%, were requiring it. So we're seeing a similar shift in master's programs. A relatively low percentage require it, whereas they used to almost always do so. So you have to look, that APA document or database that has all of the graduate programs in it, it's going to say, is it required? Is it not required? If it's required, what's the minimum score for us to take your application? The general test today, it used to be paper and pencil, but today it's done on computer. It's designed like the SAT to cover a lot of different skills, quantitative skills, writing skills, English language skills. You have a verbal ability score, a quant ability score, and then, I don't know, about 20 years ago, they added the analytical skills section to the test. It takes about 2 hours to complete. It does require that you go to a testing center to take the test under supervision. There was a big revision in 2023 to shorten it and to revise some of the types of questions. I think the goal was to try and make it more doable, more user-friendly, and in hopes of more graduate programs picking it up again. Average GRE scores are often included on program web pages if GREs are required for students. And again, as I mentioned, the APA Guide to Graduate Study includes whether or not GRE is required. Now, there's also a GRE psychology test. It's called a subject area test. Even fewer programs still require that. So back in the 80s, when I was going to graduate school, I had to take both the GRE general test and the GRE psychology test. Both were required for the application to the doctoral program that I entered. Today, it's becoming less and less and less required to take the GRE psych test. If it is required, it's a 2-hour exam that assesses your knowledge and competency in general psychology courses. So there are questions about biological psychology, cognitive, social, developmental, clinical, methodology, and so on. Lots of questions about the history of psych. Because it's designed to be broad and to cover broad topics in psychology, the best way to prepare if you are applying to a program that requires it is to reread your Intro to Psych textbook. Graduate programs are always going to require some form of admissions essay. Many programs simply ask applicants to write an essay describing their interests and career objectives. If you're applying to doctoral programs, one of the essential components to include, in addition to talking about your interests and career goals and presenting yourself, making yourself individual, is to really key in on the type of research you want to conduct and the faculty with whom you see affinity. So, when I was applying to graduate school, I knew I wanted to study some criminal justice related angle of social psychology, and I found 2 faculty members at the university I eventually went to who had similar interests, and I made sure to highlight in my admissions essay the fact that this researcher was studying these topics. I too have interest in those topics specifically in this way, and I did so with the other faculty member as well. And what that shows is, A, you know what you want to do in grad school. You know what you want to study, and there are at least 2 people in the program with whom you could work, because mentorship is extremely important in doctoral programs. Faculty are going to look for applicants who are interested in the same things as them, because they can, bring them into their lab, they can engage them in collaborative research, in collaborative presentations, and help mentor them as they build their own research programs across their graduate experience. So, before you write your essay, if you're wanting to get into a doctoral program, learn as much about the program and the faculty as possible. Even with research-oriented master's programs, do the same thing. It will put you ahead of the game. It will show that you understand. You don't just want a master's degree. You want a master's degree at their program, based on what they offer and who their faculty are. So that's really kind of your goal when you're writing this essay. Make sure that you build your essay around whatever specific questions they ask, and then make sure that you're tailoring it to the program. You have to do more than just change the name and address of the person you're sending the essay to. You really need to, you can have some basic structure to your essay that's the same for all applications, but you really need to customize the way you talk about yourself and the way you talk about the program so that there's a good fit. It's also recommended that you don't get overly personal with your story. So while you may have deeply personal reasons, so for example, maybe you've had a trauma history, and as a result of your own trauma history, you want to become a clinical psychologist. You can say exactly what I just said, but it's best if you don't go into a great deal of detail about your personal background. Number one, it gets kind of long, and number two, it starts to feel a little like, to the admissions committee, like you are looking to go to graduate school to get help for your own individual problems. That is not what they're looking for. So try and avoid getting too personal about your background and your story. What are the key components of the essay? If you have been involved in research, make sure to highlight that. Talk about who supervised it. Was it required? Was it for course credit? Was it an independent study? Discuss what the research was about and what you did as a part of it. You can talk about the areas of psychology that are the most interesting to you and that you are the most invested in terms of the career that you want to pursue. You can also include additional experiences that are relevant, and they do need to be relevant. You can talk about internship, practica that you've had. You can talk about other things, skills that you've built, experiences that you've had that are relevant to admission to the graduate program. It's important that you talk about your goals and how the specific program is going to help you meet those goals. If the goals that you describe have nothing to do with the program, or they're only loosely connected, and the admissions committee is like, yeah, they need this other kind of program, not this one, we can't meet their needs, they're going to pass on you. So make sure that you're a good fit for the program. Letters of recommendation are very important. Every graduate program is going to require that you submit usually 3 letters of recommendation. And typically what they're expecting is letters written by faculty members from your undergraduate program. So the letters need to be able to address, so the letter writer needs to know you well enough to reflect on your personal qualities, what you've done, what kind of experiences with you make you special. And the letter writer needs to be able to show enough understanding of who you are to reflect on your fitness for the program that you're applying for. Think about targeting for your reference letters faculty members who have considerable experience with you. You can also consider, if you've worked in various positions at the university, administrators who may be able to reflect on your abilities and your fit with the program you're looking at. You can also consider internship supervisors and employers, but only if they are absolutely relevant to the program you're applying for. So employers, like if you worked at Dunkin' Donuts and you're applying to a clinical PhD program, your Dunkin' boss is not relevant to the work you want to do. Do not use your Dunkin' boss. Instead, go to faculty members, go to people who can reflect on your abilities as a student. You want to try and get a set of letters that can cover all of your skills. Like you can have, a letter writer who's really, you've had several courses with, and they can reflect on your academic abilities. If you worked as a research assistant in a faculty member's lab, that can be your person who really hones in on your research skills. If you did an internship, the internship supervisor, both the on-campus one and the on-site one, can reflect on your applied abilities. Make sure that you, at the very least, you have a phone conversation or an online meeting or an in-person meeting with your letter writer. Talk to them about the programs that you're applying for. Talk to them frankly about the kind of recommendation they're going to give to you when they write that recommendation. Do not email a faculty member and say, "Hey, Dr. So-and-so, I need a letter of recommendation for X university and I need it by this date." You're being presumptuous. You're assuming that the faculty member wants to write a letter for you. You're also assuming that they're going to write a good recommendation for you. You cannot assume either of those things. You need to talk to them. You need to talk to them about your goals. You need to talk to them about your process of selecting schools for application. You need to ask them, do you feel confident that you can give me a good recommendation? I mentioned this in the chapter on getting a job with your bachelor's degree. Same rules apply here. Now, there's an additional thing that you need to keep in mind. You will be asked to check a box. And most of the letter writing now, we used to have to do it, manually and send it in the mail. Now, most of it is done online. There's a box. When you provide your references to the university you're applying to, it'll ask you, do you waive your right to see the referee's letter? And you need to do that. You need to waive your right to see what your referees write. It is assumed that if you don't waive that right, you're not sure what that letter writer is supplying for you. And more importantly, the people reviewing your application are going to look at that and go, oh, the referee, the person writing the letter, they know that the student is going to read it. So that's likely to impact the candidness with which they will write. So you need to waive your right to see what the letter writers submit. What is some information that you need to provide to your letter writer? Now, most of the time at a university, your letter writers will have access to your transcript if you are a current student. If, however, let's say you've been out of school for a while and in the workforce, you may need to provide your transcript. If you have a resume or a CV, you need to give them that. If you've taken the GRE, give them a heads up on what your scores were. Remind them of what courses you've taken with them. We have a lot of students. Our memories are not perfect. You can remind them of what courses they've taken with you and what grades you got in them. They may want to see an artifact, a piece of work that you did. Although, most of us keep online records now and we can look them up. If you had a capstone type paper, that can help your letter writer to understand who you are and refresh their memory if it's been a while. you can provide them a lot of this stuff about professional goals, relevant experience, awards. That should be on your resume or CV. It also could be your cover letter, your statement of purpose, your application letter that you're providing to schools. So provide that letter to them. Make sure that they know, that your letter writers know what programs you're applying to, what the deadlines are, and so on. It can also be helpful if you provide them with a copy of the recommendation forms, although that's harder to do these days because most of the universities are involved in, they use online processes for all of this. Now the confidentiality issue, and I mentioned this before, I'm going to reiterate it here. Recommendation forms from grad programs require you to decide whether to waive or retain your rights to see what letter writers have written about you. And it's really important that you waive your rights. You know, we're kind of all taught, you know, watching crime procedurals and true crime, don't waive your rights to anything. Well, this is one case where you want your letter writers to be seen as people who are speaking frankly, under the assumption that the student cannot read it. So it's really important that you waive your rights. Many faculty members will actually say no to you if you don't waive your right to see the letter. Other faculty may provide you with a copy of each letter, even if you have waived your rights. It's really up to the individual faculty member to decide how they want to handle that. If you're unsure of your decision, talk to your advisor, your academic advisor, and talk to your referee. Some graduate programs, typically this is in clinical and counseling and other applied areas, are going to want an interview. Experimental areas, typically not. Like I did not have to interview for grad school. For programs that do require interviews, some programs are going to do video interviews first and phone interviews, and then on-site interviews later. Some don't interview at all. It really just depends. If you are applying to a clinical or counseling graduate program, you can almost be assured you are going to have to be interviewed, probably more than once. So kind of prepare for that. Why interviews? Especially in these practice-oriented areas, it's a way of finding out that softer information that goes beyond GPAs and GRE scores and things that people have carefully crafted into a letter. They want to meet you. They want to look into your eyes. They want to see how you interact with people, with the interviewers and with other potential students. Some universities, the second round, you know, after they do a video or phone interview, the second round is a group interview. They have a group of potential students. They want to see how you interact with each other as well before they make their decisions. And then, you know, one-on-one interviews may also be done. What do you do to prepare? You need to really learn about the program, learn about the values, beliefs, and philosophy of the program, study the department website, become really familiar with the faculty who are in the program. Make sure you understand the emphasis of the program, kind of its philosophical backdrop. Like, you want to know, is this clinical psychology program completely psychoanalytic, or is it more humanistic, or is it all of the things? Is it very broad-based, or is it singularly focused? Consider how you're going to answer, like practice answering common graduate interview questions. And your textbook has a list of them, so you should practice preparing answers to those questions. You also can benefit from trying to get a sense of how the program feels. Like, your authors call this a climate, the emotional climate. If you walk into a graduate department and people seem stressed and angry, that may be a clue that there's some issues. Or if people just aren't around, if it's dead quiet, people aren't engaged, they come to class and they leave, they don't hang around the program, that may be a sign to you that there may be issues with the program. Now, video interviews, many grad programs are doing initial interviews by video conferencing, and this is a cost savings for both the program and for the applicant. Interviews are often preferred because they are efficient, they're cheap, they're easy to set up. And it gives you some of the information that you can get from one-on-one. Like you can see how people speak, how comfortable they are in an interview setting. If you get an initial interview, it means the admissions committee has decided you're eligible and we're interested in you. And this is your time to show how good a fit you are for the program. Treat any video interview just as you would an on-site interview. Dress up, be prepared, make sure that you make eye contact, and it means training yourself to look at the camera and not at your keyboard. That helps you to make a good impression. Use a good microphone so that you can actually be heard. Make sure that you're in a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. So like, don't sit on your bedroom floor in your family home or in your dorm to do your interview. Go to a nicer space. Make sure that you're in a quiet environment where interruptions are not going to occur. So what happens after you apply? You could be waitlisted. So waitlisted applicants are people who they're generally seen as a good fit for the program. They haven't made the first cut, and they're going to wait and see if a position becomes available. If you're on the wait list, there's a very good possibility you'll get in, because usually there's somebody who drops out or funding comes through and they've been able to add a position. You could be accepted. For most programs, you're going to hear sometime during March or April whether or not you've been accepted to the program. Formal decision letters are often out during that time, and then you're given a deadline. It's usually around April 15th for you to decide whether or not to attend the program. Now, why that date? It has a lot to do with just the funding cycle of major universities. If you decline an offer, by that date, it means they can give it to someone on the wait list. If you don't get in, there's always the possibility of trying again at a later time. Some clinical psychology programs, the rejection rate is as high as 90%. So be clear, certain kinds of programs are incredibly competitive. So, if you have a marginal record in any one area, it could put you out of the running for these highly competitive programs. So what I tend to encourage students to do is, A, don't take it personally. If you're only looking at top flight clinical psych programs, you're likely to be rejected from most of them. So what I try to encourage students to do, apply for a couple of top flight programs. Apply for some mid-range ones. Apply for some ones that have a looser set of requirements for getting in. In psychology, regardless of whether it's practice areas or not, they get a lot more applicants than they can ever accept. So make sure that you're emotionally prepared for that situation. Be careful in the types of programs that you select. So let's say you're a student who had a rough couple of first year, you had a rough first year as an undergraduate student, and you've worked your way back up, you're doing much better, your GPA though is hovering around 3. You are not going to get into a top flight clinical or counseling PhD program because there will be too many people who are far better than you, unless you have stellar attributes in other areas and your letter writers just are rock solid. So, keep in mind that you have to be realistic about your educational background, your experience as you put together your applications and as you make decisions about what kind of program you want to get into. Generally, acceptance rates for master's programs, there are higher percentages of applicants who are accepted to those programs. PhD programs, much more restrictive. on how many they take. So you may have a cohort class in a master's counseling program that's 30 students. In comparison, a doctoral program in counseling psychology may take 4. So you have to think about the type of degree, the type of program, how many people they typically let in, what is their typical rejection and acceptance rate, and so on. And be realistic about that. So that concludes my coverage of Chapter 15.